Next up, we have a group discussion on the value of a DMP. Please welcome thought leaders from iProspect, RocketFuel, and Vonage to the stage.
Well, we're hitting the afternoon session. So Justin and Tom wanted to do a little game. They wanted to have everybody stand up and do jumping jacks. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm sure you're all ready to go run out to the craps tables, but we're here to talk about data. So exciting. But the beauty of the data management platform. So I'm Eleanor Smith, our Regional Director of Display for the East. I'm here with Justin and Tom to talk about this topic. So I'd love to just kick it off and have both of you kind of introduce yourselves and just really talk about the power of the data management platform, what's so important to you, and really why this is something that we should be looking at.
Tom Zawacki, how are you? Congratulations to iProspect on 20 years. I realized that, unfortunately, I've been in this business longer than that. It was kind of a sad realization as I was looking at it. I started in the early 90s in an advertising agency called Media, doing digital advertising, some of the industry's first online advertising. And so I've sat in the same seat as iProspect on the agency side. And we love our clients. We do, very much. And I spent the last 20 years thinking about programmatic marketing and digital marketing, and now I'm the head of strategy at RocketFuel. I was part of the X+1 acquisition about a year and a half ago. RocketFuel has evolved over the last year and a half after that acquisition to create a predictive marketing platform that contains a DMP, a DSP, and artificial intelligence to do predictive marketing. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
So if you're following it at home on your playbooks, I'm not Chris Narayan, who is the SVP at Vonage. I'm Justin Weag, Director of Digital Media at Vonage. I've been with the company for almost 3 years. During that time, I think everyone probably knows Vonage, the Woohoo song, etc. We have made a pivot from kind of your traditional home phone into a whole host of business communication for small business, medium business, and enterprise. So if you thought data management was interesting, you should try out B2B marketing.
Right on.
Before that, I actually come from the agency world, so I've worked with a number of different partners on the agency side. Yeah, I'm happy to be here to fill in for Chris, who unfortunately was a little bit under the weather, but he would like to thank him he did a lot of preparation for this.
Don't say what happened to him.
So I think, that's a great perspective, and when we think about Vonage, you guys have come a long way from a business organization, and the development of looking at that B2B customer is really unique, and you've had a DMP now with X+1 and RocketFuel for 3 years. When you were looking at a DMP and really kind of evaluating if this was right for me, what were kind of the most important criteria as you started to embark on that?
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of history, because I think it's important. So back in like 2007, 2008, Vonage was like one of the top 5 digital media advertisers. It was just a massive spray and pray approach. So we were, all the pop unders, you guys may or may not remember those.
Loved them.
So basically one day we decided, well, we don't really know what this was doing, and we turned it off. And then we did virtually no digital display or video or anything for years. And then basically when we decided to move back in the space, we realized we needed the best, some new technology, a new approach, and that really was founded on the use of data and targeting and segmentation. And one of the key elements that we were really looking for was the DMP DSP combo. So which was back in 2013 when this kind of we were looking for it, was kind of a pretty short list, because we wanted to be able to seamlessly use all of the DMP data and a DSP and Cassie mentioned it before around match rates, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important too when you think about your audience and how interesting your consumer and now your business audience can be, and what we probably don't know a little bit about who your business audience is, because it is so new and it's expanding, and it goes from everything from the micro business to that enterprise business. But when you really think about kind of the value of the DMP, what have been some of those really powerful things that you've found in the DMP, not just from a media activation perspective, but even beyond media from a site decisioning perspective?
Yeah, so I think there's 4 major things that we're doing with the DMP. So It's really around audience segmentation. So we're bringing in a lot of our first-party data into the DMP with a ton of information that you just can't get online. So for example, on the consumer side, which country they call, or how often they're using our product. And what we can do is take that and build bigger segments around those to go out and build lookalikes to go find more of those audiences, throughout the internet. The second thing I think is on-site personalization. So basically, RocketFuel is I think you guys call it a decision engine. Basically, being able to make advanced decisions on data, which technically there's other solutions out there, but you can combine it with off-site data, with your first-party data, do some really cool things. The other things that we're really doing with it, and then I have the four. Modeling actually. So basically, if you've never been to the Vonage website before, we don't know a whole lot about you, what you're interested in, whether you're a business consumer, a home consumer, whether you call international, you call domestic. So what we really want to try to do is build probabilities that you likely fall in one of these categories, and therefore we should show personalized content that will increase your ability to convert. So we've done some of that. We've seen conversion lifts of 10%, and that's just kind of like just barely scraping the surface with some basic personalization.
And I think that's so important as we think about moving away from the spraying and praying mentality and really getting very accurate in who we're targeting. And Tom, I don't know if you're seeing that from other clients.
One of the cool things that Vonage is doing, the roles of these different ecosystem partners that we saw earlier. Hilton was talking about 3 or 4 different ecosystem partners. The thing that I think is very cool that Vonage is doing is that the DMP is really good at historical analysis, right? We get data, we centralize that data and rationalize it, then we're able to do analysis of that data and find out who our most valuable customers are and what they look like, what those data attributes are, characteristics are of those customers that are most valuable to us. And those attributes roll up into segments. But then we want to do modeling off of that to find prospects that look like those most valuable customers. So DMP is very good at that historical backwards looking, doing the centralization, the analysis, and then the syndication of those audiences out. But in addition to that, what Vonage is doing is using artificial intelligence and predictive marketing to do forward-looking modeling, real-time modeling, as they're interacting with people in the bid exchanges, as they're interacting with people in the media space, to build those models up in real time so that it's a combination of who are my most valuable customers and who are the people out there that are most likely, have the highest propensity to become a most valuable customer. And I think it's a very cool combination of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think we've absolutely seen that in a lot of ways. I mean, we were talking about it earlier and kind of quantifying, we had talked about, you have always known that the Indian audience was really important, I think, for your business, but that can also be a pretty small pool of people. And so deciding, and we also can't necessarily target in media against that as a demographic. And I think using the power of the DMP to really understand what are the different attributes of that individual that we can actually use and activate in media, I think can be really important.
Right. I think you cannot underestimate the power of first-party data. So when we rolled this out, we were using 2 DSPs, actually 3 DSPs, going out there doing lookalike audience, lookalike targeting off of the people that came to our website. However, once we started to layer on the first-party data and syndicate, building the audience through the DMP, we basically saw our CPAs cut in half. And that was because, hey, we're now going after a much more granular audience, whether it was just, like the home phone users or the international callers. And some of these segments are so tiny, like people who are calling the Dominican Republic. You're not going to be able to purchase that data segment or audience from a third-party data provider.
I think that's an overall trend. I think what we've seen in the industry is a trend to move towards being data self-sufficient. We were talking about, I think Sam was talking about the digital economy earlier. And one of the outcomes of that has been the amazing increase in data volume and velocity. There's a huge amount of data volume and velocity that comes into any client organization. And we can now score all of those interactions between the brands and consumers on those digital platforms. And there are enough data attributes to use in the first-party data, whether that's transactional data or CRM data, plus behavioral data, IP data or data on your website or data in media to create models that are first-party data models only and don't rely on third-party data. Why is that wonderful? Well, those models are more accurate and you don't have to pay for them because you don't have to pay for third-party data. So a big trend in the industry right now is to move towards a data self-sufficient mode for most of our clients.
And are you seeing that most of your clients are really starting from their first-party data first? When they're onboarding that DMP, that the most critical piece is really that first-party data?
Yeah, it's a combination. It starts as a combination, and I think over time you become less and less reliant on third-party data, which gives you some initial insights that are wonderful, but as soon as you activate that, it's expensive and at times not very accurate. And so as you build that cookie pool and as you build that pool of first-party data, your models become smarter and smarter and less reliant on the third-party data, and you see your performance go up.
And I think that's absolutely something you've seen as well. When you all were first kind of walking into these waters of the DMP and you were starting to understand how to incorporate your first-party data, what challenges did you feel like you guys had as an organization, whether it be internally or not, really to get this in there?
Yeah, I think, well, there was pretty significant challenges because, after the 2008 situation, there was a lot of resistance internally from the executive team, like, oh, digital doesn't work. We tried that. We were spending a ton of money. So we basically, all the burden of proof was on us to be able to say, everyone kind of knew, like, oh yeah, we should be in digital, but we're skeptical. So that was the first biggest challenge, is be able to get the permission to invest in a DMP, to go and carve out some money. We were spending an enormous amount of money on television, so that was, carving out a piece of that. And then it was all of the setup, working with legal to, pipe in some of the first party data, get everything tagged, working with our development team. So it was a lot of the setup.
Really fun. Really fun.
Yeah.
The most exciting part about it.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Which I think can be, absolutely a little bit scary in some ways and for a lot of clients. And I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, that if that's true today still for clients that are first walking into the DMP, if it is a bit scary to try and navigate the internal waters of, how do I make sure that, we're compliant legally and everything else, and that my data is really qualified, if you're seeing that as well.
Yeah, I think it can be paralyzing at times, right? The digital economy is on us. Right? If we listen to the presentation from earlier, that can be daunting, and we have tools that can help us tackle that. But when we try to boil the ocean at once, it becomes really tough. And so I think that the most important thing is, we talked a lot about short-term economic impact today, as well as long-term innovation and competitive differentiation. And so in working with Vonage for 4 years, certainly there's been short-term economic impact that you've seen, but over those 4 years, the foundation of data and the models that are being built, that becomes competitive differentiation and innovation for the future. So the programmatic marketing roadmap that you have to create as a client to get started looks at where those priorities are from an economic investment, starts there, and then marches sanely through a process where business cases are proven and you adopt more things across the enterprise.
Which I love the way that you've said that too, and kind of that roadmap, and it's almost like your tech stack roadmap in a way. And a question I had, for you was, as this digital ecosystem gets more and more complicated and new technologies come in, we've seen the slide that Sam had. Where does that analytics platform stop and start, and where does the DMP start and stop? I think they can be very similar in a lot of cases.
So I think the DMP as part of this conversation is a component of all of that. But when we do a programmatic marketing roadmap for our clients to really do programmatic marketing well across the enterprise, it takes about 15 different tech partners, right? And you can consolidate those down to maybe 7 or 8, but that's a lot, and they don't all talk to each other, and they're not all so friendly. And so I think understanding that ecosystem and figuring that out is really important. I don't know, what have you found?
Yeah, I think going back to the roadmap part is really key. Being able to take a look and say, okay, what are your goals? What is your KPIs? And really, what are you using now? What is your, do you just have a couple DSPs that you're using? You're trying to feed your first party data into it, but it's not really working, or it's difficult. So I think it's really to take a look at the whole landscape and then understand what the DMP really is, and that that's, we heard about it before. It's taking all of the data, your media, media data, the impressions that are out there, your first-party data, your on-site data, everything and combining it into this big pool where basically, an artificial intelligence modeling can really do its work.
And we've talked about this, I think, a number of times as your business grows and as you do want to scale. I think it's important to have that central source where we can start to build and syndicate audiences out, so that you're seeing the power kind of, beyond just one track and a holistic view.
And I feel that the lines are kind of getting blurry, right? Most of the DSPs out there will say, "Oh yeah, we can do a DMP," and then you have publishers saying, "Yeah, we have a DMP. We could syndicate audiences." But in my mind, it's about using a technology. And there are others out there, but for us, for RocketFuel and X+1, X+1 was built as a DMP, with that in mind. So DMP first. So it's about the algorithm, it's about the modeling, and then it can, basically syndicate out those audiences for the DSPs to go find them.
Absolutely.
So it's
I
a
think
little
to
bit
answer
of
your
a
question
different
from
angle.
earlier about the analytics, where does one stop and the other begin? I think analytics partners are very vertically oriented, in that you're getting your great media analytics, your great site analytics, or whatever it might be. When we're trying to, as you know, when we're trying to coordinate a customer journey across many channels, the tech platforms that we're talking about help you look horizontally across the organization and coordinate that journey for clients.
Which you've absolutely seen too. How do we understand not just how do we activate that audience within media, but then also decision on the site?
Yeah,
as well.
it's basically about finding the right people at the right time, showing them the right messaging and the right experience. I think everything is kind of moving towards more of experiential, right? Across every industry, it's about the experience more so than just, just the purchase.
Absolutely. So we wanted to open it up to the audience to a few questions, get you all alive and excited about the data management platform. I can't see very well, but any questions on the DMP? Tweet team, you have
How is the
nothing?
beauty of DMP and data analytics not exciting enough for you to raise your hand and participate? I know it's 3, food coma's hitting, we're thinking about beers in the casino, but...
All right, so I am excited about DMP.
Yay! Hooray!
You've done your job. You've sold me on how good this can be. But imagine I haven't done anything to start yet. What do I need to do first?
You want to go first?
Yeah, so that's a great question because I think it's probably one that a lot of people in the audience are thinking about. So I think it comes down to, first and foremost, and I kind of hinted at this before, like taking a look at what you're doing now and saying, okay, am I using my first party data? What's the landscape look like? Do I feel that I'm getting what I should be out of the digital platform now, but also looking towards the future, right? Technology is moving so fast, you have to keep up with it. So, I think first off, if you're not using first party data, that should be a kind of like okay, let's kind of see how we can make that happen. But also, if you have a lot of vendors, right? So if you're using 5 different DSPs, you have a third-party data partner, you're using some kind of some other tools, and it's just like overwhelming. And I think it's looking at the different options out there and saying, is this right for me? But also, can I get the buy-in that I need to from all the people that this is going to touch? And that's going to be hard, and a lot of it's going to be quantifying. Okay, so we got to quantify what this is going to do from an ROI perspective, but also, the way we approached it, it's a long-term investment. So we're not going to see the bang up front, but we guarantee that we'll see the bang in 2 or 3 years. Well, we saw it a lot sooner than that, but you probably want to preface with, there's a timeline from when you get all of this piping in place and you go out to market, and then before you actually see really actionable results.
Yeah, the first thing that I would do is hire iProspect. I would. That's... That's a thinly veiled thank you for this, by the way. But no, honestly, listen, it is true. You need partners that really understand this space. And if you don't have a media and marketing partner on the agency side and on the technology side who understands your business, then you're not going to be as successful. So the first thing is the right partners. And then two things that we do right away. One is an ecosystem audit. So you audit all of the tech stack partners that you have in your ecosystem that are making marketing happen. And again, that'll be about 15 or 16 partners. And then we do a business impact analysis that understands if you were to consolidate some of those partners, what is the economic impact to the organization? And the combination of those two things, understanding the kind of the who and what the impact is very effective. So thank you for the question.
One more question?
Hi, so I know that you're using a lot of the DMP data to focus specifically on display, but now that you've gotten a better understanding of who your consumer is, how have you used that to better improve your other marketing channels?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So we are doing a lot with on-site personalization. So that's the easy part, right? So basically, being able to show a consumer, either the similar messaging or targeting that you've seen, elsewhere, be able to, understand who the person is that's coming in. But it also gives you a little bit more granularity on who the customer is. So with some of the DMP profiles that we were able to run, you basically understand some of the third-party interests that these people have. For example, we did a kind of modeling exercise where we were showing some people a contract, some people not a contract. And what kind of popped was that people who wanted a contract were people that were older, that traveled a lot more, that had a higher HHI, that were into gardening, and a bunch of different really specific things. And you could start taking that information and saying, okay, well, these people want security. That's what, so a contract in their eyes is not bad. It's like, oh, my price won't go up for 1 year. Where other people are like, younger people especially are like, oh boy, contract, I don't want to get locked in. So it's like being able to use that to kind of segment messaging. And some of it has spilled over to our television advertising, but it's really focused on the web.
Yeah, and I think there are three things that as programmatic media and as that data foundation is built, that optimizes the media spend on the programmatic side. But then the two logical places to go from there, one is to use customer journey and funnel analytics to optimize all of the people on your plan, all of the publishers on your plan. So we're using data to look at how those publishers are moving consumers through the Vonage conversion cycle and optimizing all of those publishers. And then, of course, the website optimization. And we talk a lot about the what, that's the what, but the why is because we're increasing response rates, we're increasing conversion rates, increasing dollars per conversion, decreasing abandonment rates. All of those variables that go along the success chain are being optimized throughout that. And so that's the economic benefit that comes out of it.
Question over
We
here.
have a question within the app.
Oh.
What's the most surprising insight you discovered about your most valuable customers from utilizing a DMP?
Oh, that's a good.
Gardeners is pretty good.
The gardeners was pretty interesting, I gotta say.
Well, you're thinking about that. I don't have one for Vonage, but I do have one for Starbucks. We were working with Starbucks, and we were looking at the data, and we're trying to identify heavy coffee drinkers and whatnot. And one of the attributes that popped up was owns a Ford 150. That was pretty interesting. And then another was lives in the Southeast. And then another was works in the construction industry. And so we started to look at all of that data, and we made the inference that, hey, there are general contractors and construction workers out there that are on the road all the time, and they're heavy drinkers of coffee. And so it was a segment or a model that we never would have thought of if the artificial intelligence and machine learning didn't run thousands of experiments to uncover that. So that's a fun little example.
I think one of the, and it's not as exciting or as cool as that, but
B2B communications?
the surprising thing for me was how, when we looked at kind of our audience profile, there was a lot of high-end HHI customers, and I'm saying, and we kind of said to ourselves, well, why is that? Until we did a little bit of research and figured out that they live in areas with bad cell service, so they need a home phone. And it's just something that would never have occurred to us if we didn't look at the data that way. So we were able to say, okay, you can publicly available data out there around where the cell towers are and where they're not. And you could start targeting off of that. That's, that was a little complicated, but it's
super cool.
Yeah,
in a geeky kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question, but if not, one more.
Hi, so I have a quick one for you. So I think a lot of marketers like to think they're smarter than the data that is coming into something like a DMP. So how did you, in lieu of immediate revenue, 2 to 3 year wait for that, sort of get everybody on board from a creative messaging perspective? You have a lot of creatives who want to really own what message is going to what audiences, and what guardrails did you put around, okay, this is a segment that makes sense, gardeners is maybe something we need to go after, or it's not.
Right, so I think from a holistic standpoint, one of the first things that we are is first and foremost a direct response. So we are willing, and this is not like every company, so we are, willing, in guardrails, following all our legal protocol and our brand to basically, it's the part of the Vonage brand is disruptor, so take a risk. So we're kind of out there a little bit, trying to be a little more edgy. So that gives us a lot more room than, say, other companies to try some of this stuff. But the other thing that we could do is we have a great research organization internally that does a lot of analytics and data on our actual customer base, doing surveys, doing focus groups and panels. And we were basically able to say, okay, does this match what our research team is saying? And the answer was yes. And so we're like, okay, this is great. Because some of the stuff is not exactly intuitive when you're looking at it. You're like, oh, does this fit? Does this not fit? And we were able to kind of match the data. Because, no offense, I can't trust, you can't trust any specific data unless you have like a secondary point of view.
Always good to have multiple points of view. And so I think, in the last minute, a few minutes that we have, this has obviously been a very complex management platform. Data management platforms are complex. They will continue to be complex. We've seen them change exponentially over the last 1 to 3 years. And I'm curious actually from both of you, where do we see this going? What's the next thing that's really going to evolve and change in the next 3 to 5 years? Maybe for Vonage, what does that look like?
Well, so we're obviously going to do a rollout, to the business, the business side, both small business, medium, and enterprise, which is going to bring a whole new slew of challenges, around different industries and different sizes of companies. So for us, that's kind of the short term. I think, we are not using as much of the personalization as I think we can or should be. So I think that's something that we're going to be trying to do a lot more. And I think personalization and experiential, and really using the data to not talk about our products, but talk about how they help the customer or how the customer can, so just a complete customer focus versus, hey, this is a great feature. Okay, this is how you use it. This is how it makes your life easier.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if that really relates to DMP, but
Customer first.
I'll just echo that and say I think that just the scale and scope of impact that we have. I mean, programmatic media is about a $12 billion marketplace. Digital marketing is about a $60 billion marketplace. But last quarter, we executed the first programmatic television buy where we're bidding on inventory within the Dish network. And think about that, right? That's a $250 billion marketplace within the US. And so as branding and DR and the funnel collapse and we're able to apply data to branding and do predictive branding the same way that great brand experiences are now woven into DR, the impact that we're going to have as programmatic marketers and predictive marketers on television inventory, on radio inventory, and what has been the offline world is going to be amazing. And that's going to change the way that we work together.
Great. Well, thank you both. I think we got through a very interesting, beautiful topic.
Awesome. It was beautiful.
And thank you all.
Thank you.